During the Mattapan Community Bank opening, I had a chance to sit down for a one-on-one interview with JP Morgan Chase CEO Jamie Dimon to ask about the economy, inflation, cryptocurrency, and more.
First of all, this is an unbelievable country. So when people denigrate our country because we have flaws, I really don't like that. So it's okay to say this is the finest country on the planet, which it is, and yes, we have flaws, which we should remediate over time. And so there are some structural things. But, banks have been doing things like this for a long time, and we're required under law to do open branches in lower middle-income neighborhoods, which I'm totally supportive of. But to me, we were doing this in Detroit before, and then COVID and the murder of George Floyd pointed out something which we already knew, that when there are big problems and recessions or storms, the poor get hurt more. And the murder of George Floyd and other innocent blacks pointed out that we don't have racial equality 170 years after the Civil War. So I don't think there's anything wrong with people saying, what can we do to fix these problems that are special? So for example, when you actually do the work, we need more loan officers, mostly black loan officers, in this part of town who can relate to folks here, teach them how we can do mortgages. We may have to change how we do the credit box a little bit. I just met with a private client. So building wealth, you build it through a home or making investments.
Right.
So we have someone in this branch who's dealing with the local community to get them to save money and stuff like that. So these efforts will make a big difference. Like I said, we're doing them in 15 cities at this point, and I think everyone should help out. Sure. There's nothing wrong with saying let's lift up this part of society. It's not different than you would do in a family. If you have a family and they're very successful members, they probably do a little bit helping up, lifting up this less successful members of the family.
Right. As we talked about when we first spoke 6 months ago about the racial inequities in Boston, when you look at the finances of minority or white families, many times they were blocked from getting access to mortgages or credit. And so this will go a long way.
And you have to study it. Sometimes in the old days they talk about redlining, but there are other problems like how appraisals are done in different parts of town, how credit is done. Like for example, most people don't know this. You have a credit score. You can go online and look at your credit score.
It's very good, by the way.
I'm sure it is. But my point is that a lot of people that we call them, they don't have credit scores. We call them thin files. But if you're a mother or father and you've been paying rent for 20 years, you're probably pretty good credit. So using alternative data to make a loan you might not otherwise have made.
Let me ask you, if I can, when we met in May, I asked how worried you were about inflation, and you said it was a legitimate concern at the time. How do you feel about inflation now?
I feel the same way, so it's obvious that it's there a little bit. So I think what we should look at, first of all, when we met, I forgot what the unemployment was, but people forget, we had a 15% unemployment rate. It's now 4.6. COVID deaths are coming down. We've had Delta, we've had the supply chain issues, and the country's still growing at 4%. So inflation has moved up to 5%, but jobs are plentiful, wages are going up, there's a wave of growth coming, and yes, you're going to have a bit of inflation. Hopefully it's containable, but there's a chance it's not. But
so
let's enjoy
the
growth, enjoy the jobs.
Sure.
This is a very good thing that unemployment is 4.6, and our folks think it's going to be below 4 in 6 to 8 months.
Sure.
That's a wonderful thing. It might even be lower than it's ever been by the end of next year in history.
Let me ask this, because I think anyone who even was a child in the 1970s hears inflation, energy, worries, misery index, oh my God, here we go, this is going to be bad. And tell me if I'm being too simplistic, but at that time, Paul Volcker really had to put the country into recession to get inflation under control because interest rates were at 13–14%. Because the Fed has kept interest rates so low since the financial crisis, do you believe the Fed has enough bullets in the barrel, so to speak, to keep incrementally raising rates to keep inflation under control, or is that too simplistic?
So if you go back in history, inflation started in 1968. Paul Volcker raised rates 200 basis points in 1982.
Right. So
we really didn't control it for a long time, which is why it probably got that bad. And for years, people were saying transitory, supply chains, and it basically was wrong.
Right.
I think we're more on top of it now. So I think the Fed has the tools. And if we're lucky, they'll
because we have a lot of room to grow.
No, they can raise rates quite a bit. They don't have to do it 25 basis points, stuff like that. But what you want to do is have the growth, and they may want to slow it down to cool off inflation. What Paul Volcker did put us in a deep recession, and so we don't really want that. There's a chance they're going to have to do that.
Yeah.
It won't be up to the Fed at one point. They will have to react to the facts on the ground. So in the meantime, you're going to have very good growth. And like
we
I
have
said,
good growth, but here's my question.
And you have, we have the two sides of labor. Wages are going up, that's a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
We spoke about income inequality. Well, wages going up is a good thing. Jobs being available is a good thing. And so,
yes.
But it's going to drive a little inflation. Hopefully it won't get anything like we had in '82.
I think what people are worried about is if inflation is too much money chasing too few goods, it's the supply chain problem that is causing the too few goods. And until that works itself out, which I think it logically ultimately will, between now and then, what do we do about that?
Yeah, so if we're sitting here a year from now, we're not going to be talking about the supply chain at all. It's already sorting itself out. And we're growing at 4% with supply chain issues and stuff like that. The markets work pretty well when people see opportunities and goods reprice and people move around and produce different things. So I'm not worried about the supply chain. And my view is that of the 5% unemployment, which is what roughly is today, we know that a piece is transitory.
Okay.
So some of the supply chain, I don't think oil is. I don't think oil can go down because there's so much less capital going into oil and gas production. And so you're going to have higher oil prices.
Right. The president announced he's going to release from the strategic oil reserves this morning. Is that a good move?
It's basically irrelevant.
Irrelevant?
Yeah,
why?
Yeah, I think the global numbers for oil are 100 million barrels used a day. They're going to release 32 million barrels over, I think they said, 2 to 3 months.
So you don't think it's going to do much?
It's symbolic. And I think oil prices went down 1% when it was announced.
Right.
And that's the full effect.
One other question. Right. The president's nominee to be the regulator to oversee banking, Dr. Sala Amarova, took some really fiery questioning from senators last week because obviously she has the full support of the White House, but they see that some of her writings indicate she might have some anti-capitalist sentiment. Do you support her nomination?
We've not commented on that at all, and I'm not going to comment on it. I just think we should understand that America has the most prosperous economy the world's ever seen, and that freedom, we call it capitalism, but also freedom of people. You can move where you want, you can have jobs where you want, you can invent businesses you want. That freedom is an unbelievable thing, and people should be very careful about knocking it down and acting like it doesn't work. There are no other systems that work better.
And one last question, I know you've got to go. We see Tom Brady's doing commercials, lots of people doing commercials, trying to tell young people to put their money into cryptocurrency. Should they be doing that?
I'm a skeptic. Blockchain is real. We use it for certain things. Parts of DeFi are real. When you say cryptocurrency, it has no intrinsic value, you're basically buying a token. Why it has a lot of that, I don't know. And I think there's so much speculation taking place in stocks and securities and crypto and stuff like that. I'd be very careful. I defend people's right to do it in a free country. I'm not going to do it.
Jamie Dimon, thank you so much.
Thank you.